pause this so I can give it my full attention. Wheezy says, hey, doing is something everyone processes in their own way. That sounds awesome. When you breathe out or let go, you can be even more mindful about it by trying to let the release be what is bothering you. Yeah, you just sort of, when I meant to do a voiceover for it, but I never did. Which I guess, that's the thing about Twitch, you can just, change gears whenever you want. It's like, you know, we've been playing PZ for a while, but like, it can pause itself. You can always put it on hold. But I'm just gonna pull up my YouTube channel here, just because what you said reminded me of a very helpful metaphor that I have to remind myself of sometimes. And I wouldn't really come across this unless I like did archery. Let's see, it's a YouTube short. Where is it? Where is it? Unless I never put it up, but I thought I did. I put up the video so that I could like re-download it and then put some voiceover on it. Okay, yeah, here we go. That is not the video I meant to click on. What the heck? It's mini, but it still counts. Drawing and holding the bow as long as possible. Why is it not pulling up the video? That is crazy. Drawing and holding the bow as long as possible, no arrow. Here we go. This was the video. Just my dog drinking in the background. I suppose right now could be the time where I do my voiceover. Well, no, because then she's still licking in the background. You can still hear it. I'd have to like pull up the sound recorder, which it's right here, you know, right at the bottom of my screen. It's well within my abilities of doing. As you can see, the longer that I hold on to the bowstring, the more my body will start to quiver and shake. And it's really no different than holding on to things in your own personal life. The more you hold on to something is no different than holding your own breath. It's not going to help anything. You can't actually breathe. Your whole body becomes tense. I even start to shut my eyes here because I'm like, oh god, how long do I have to do this? My other idea was to like put a stopwatch up there so you could see like how long I was actually doing it, but I started the voice recorder and it's been 40 seconds. So it's good for exercise, but like, is it good for your bow? Is it good for your body as an archer if you hold on that long, or should you not get in that mentality of holding as long as possible because you could potentially break the bow? You don't even know if you're doing something wrong until you sort of reevaluate and look at it. And now I'm looking at this and I'm like, it's a miracle my bow didn't break. But then I think, well, is that any different than a person? It's a miracle that we as people haven't broken, given the stresses of our life and what we have to go through and all that stuff. But I don't know. Sometimes these tangents don't really go anywhere. There's not really a lesson to be had. But what else can I say? I guess that's why I'm afraid of doing any voiceover. It's like you didn't really say anything. And it's like, no, it's true. You have to just learn to let go. That is very deep and meaningful. I appreciate you, Wheezy, because without that validation, I feel like I would just be sort of like, what the fuck am I talking about? You know, you said a lot. I did say a lot. In fact, that's another interesting tidbit of information that I came across was why talking can actually make you more anxious. I put it in my fun facts. No, I didn't. I had to make a whole new channel, text channel for it. But it's from Psychology Today. It's why do some people talk too much? Long story short, basically, if you feel you're oversharing, tell yourself that taking turns is the defining structural feature of conversation. For every paragraph of self-talk you voice, stop and let others offer commentary. Give them turns. No, I know you didn't mean it that way, Weezy. It's just, I've always wondered this as a streamer. Like, because I've only been doing this for like, not even like a full year. I've been an affiliate, but I've been streaming a little over that. Like a year and a half, maybe. Probably longer than that. Well, if you technically want to count it, it's been a lot longer than that. It's just when I started streaming, I didn't really take it seriously up until this point. But anyway, um, up to a 40% of a person's speech is about oneself. So another thing they say here is like just sit back and look at how other people are talking and try to like look at common themes in the conversation. Um, Another thing is that people, like, as soon as a thought pops in their head, they want to put it in the conversation because they're afraid they're going to lose it. But this was the best part of what they said. But the loss of one's insightful comment should not be guarded against with such tenacity as to staunch the conversational flow of others. Like, that was just, it blew my whole mind because it made me realize, like, why do you think that your conversation and, like, your contribution to the conversation is so much more important than their contribution to the conversation? Conversation's a two-way street. People with attention deficits tend to move from one topic to another occasionally instead of thematically, or associationally instead of thematically. If your attention wanders and you feel overwhelmed or unable to focus, place your talking on pause, and then listen for overlap between comments from other people. Each overlap is a theme, something in common among the participants. And then communicating instead of expressing. This one was really good too. Basic communication requires an idea, a medium of expression, like talking. The medium is the message, is something we always talked about in communication, whereas the medium is just how the message is being delivered. Like right now, Twitch would be the medium. How I'm talking to you is affected by the medium itself. Like I might do a little bit more like, I don't know. And is that my problem? Like me talking too much? Like, why are people going to type in the chat? And it's like, like, I guess Twitch is more designed for, like, the listener. It would make sense for me to do more talking than you would because I'm the broadcaster and you are the listener. But, like, I don't like dichotomies because, Wheezy, you're not a streamer, but, like, there are streamers who sit in Twitch chats. So it's like, they understand both sides of it. Some professors mainly lecture because it's easier to take control of subjects and the time. And that one really got to me, too, because it's like, I am a professor. The same goes with excessive talking and conversation. It maintains control, but conversations are not lectures. Even classroom interactions are more effective when they move toward the conversational. Stepping back from center stage and letting others take the lead can encourage relaxation and decrease anxiety. But shutting down is not the solution. Like, sometimes I go on here on Twitch and I just don't want to talk at all. Like, I just want people to come in here and they're the one, like, I might type or something. Like, I've had a stream like that. It was the Surrounded stream, where I think Bryn saw it. I'm trying to remember who, but it's not something I look on fondly. I think it really just depends on your reviewers and what type of streamer you are. Yeah. It's hard not to compare, like, what other people are doing, because you see other people playing games, you see other people, not just playing games and having fun with their community, but, like, oh, you're fine, Wheezy. Sorry. I blocked that word. So it's probably good that you put that word, not the other word, because when bots come in here, that's the word that they like to use when trying to get people to like buy viewers or stuff like that. So yes. Yeah. No, it's not often that you see like banned words in my chat, but that is one of the banned words. Okay, but like it's another thing that I wanted to mention before I close this article is it's a feedback loop. When you become anxious, you start to talk even more, and that makes you want to talk even more. The more anxious you are, the more you talk, the more anxious you are. So it's just like you just sort of need to stop. And that's the only way to break the cycle. So I almost wonder, like, by being on Twitch and constantly talking to myself, does that make my anxiety worse, or is that making it better? Because I like to think that by singing, that's a good way to relieve anxiety, because what you're doing is it's like breathing, but you're taking longer to breathe. It's like you're taking longer breaths. Does singing reduce... I guess I'll put anxiety instead of stress. It depends. There are people who use that as a way to release anxiety. Yes, singing is a highly effective natural tool for managing anxiety. Research shows that it actively lowers stress hormones while releasing mood-boosting chemicals, giving your mind and body a quick reset. Deep breathing. Singing requires controlled breathing. which mimics yoga breathing and automatically signals your nervous system to calm down. I feel like breathing does that too. Just by, I'm gonna put on my glasses, like just by looking at the words themselves, like you can think a lot faster than you can read. But sometimes I wonder. Okay, glasses on, since you can't see. Chemical release. The act of singing triggers the release of endorphins and dopamine, which elevate your mood, as well as oxytocin. The vagus nerve stimulation. The vocal vibrations of humming and singing stimulate the vagus nerve, which helps regulate emotional control and heart rate. I've thought that about like people who don't like to be touched, but they still want to feel something. It's like every time you talk, you kind of can feel it in your chest. So I wonder, like, it's like you're giving yourself a hug when you're talking or singing. Singing requires you to coordinate your breath, melody, and rhythm. This is a gentle cognitive demand, help pulling your focus out of spiraling thoughts and anchoring you in the present. You don't need a good voice or an audience. Belting out your favorite songs in the car or humming along to a playlist can help reduce stress hormones in a matter of minutes. Group settings. Joining a local choir or a group singing class often provides an extra mental health boost by fostering social connection and reducing feelings of loneliness. I so want to be in a choir. I was in one in like 8th grade, but, adult male choir, I'm sure. Opera North, they say 10 reasons why singing is good for you. Here's a one from the National Institutes of Health, an actual academic article talking about it. About the fucking switch gears and just start reading. And now I start to realize that it's slightly too big for the screen. That's game capture. Good golly. I just made that smaller. Sorry for the distraction. Wheezy, if I had a Nerf gun, I would shoot you for saying sorry. Because here's the thing you have to understand. Video games, like, I really should do academic articles talking about this too, but like, there are video game addicts out there, You're failing at lurking. Well, I'm distracting you. Technically, I'm doing a good job as a Twitch streamer by pulling you into my clutches. So the responsible thing for both of us would be me to go back to Project Zomboid and you to go back to what you were doing. But this makes you think. Reading, learning. And I like to think that this is a lot better for my anxiety than sitting here playing a fucking video game. You know what? Fuck it. Because I'm a teacher. This is what I do, I tried. I really did try. I'm closing Project Zomboid in case you were wondering. But like I genuinely I'm trying. But I'm sitting here and I'm doing my best to sort of be like, oh, I can't Smeagol, Lord of the Rings, and it doesn't feel like me. It is me, but it makes me wonder, is that the me that I want to put out to the world? Is that the me that I want people to see? Just chatting. Okay. All right. Okay. It might not be what you need to process right now. Right, like, I'm sort of like trying to like get through the thoughts and I just distract myself with video games. And it's like, that helps, but it doesn't help you, like, it's not going to help you cope with your actual problems. Like the whole why do people talk too much, that sort of thing, And it's all, I'm just going to start reading. Because I like to read. And it's good for you. There is a growing evidence, or rather, there is growing evidence that psychosocial interventions can have psychological benefits for people affected by cancer, including improved symptoms of mental health and well-being and optimized immune responses. However, despite, because like I want to be a voice actor, remember? Like how like that's the thing I want to focus on. Like, do you want to get gigs? Do you want to do this? And it's like, I don't need to get paid to educate people about whatever, because this could be helpful to anybody as long as they speak English, I suppose. You don't need to read for me to read to you. I'll. Okay. However, despite growing numbers of music interventions, particularly singing and cancer care, there is less research into their impact. We carried out a multi-center, single-arm preliminary study to assess the impact of singing on mood, stress, and immune response in 3 populations affected by cancer. Carers, that's 72 people, bereaved carers, 66 people, and patients, 55 people. Participants were excluded if pregnant or if they were currently being treated with chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or oral immunosuppressive drugs. Participants were regular participants in 5 choirs across South Wales and took part in 1 hour of group singing. Before and after singing, visual analog mood scales, stress scales, and saliva samples testing for cortisol, that's a stress hormone, beta endorphin, oxytocin, the love hormone, and 10 cytokines were taken. Across all 5 centers and in all 4 participant groups, singing was associated with significant reductions in negative affect, mood, emotions, and increases in positive affect, emotions, alongside significant increases in cytokines, including GM-CSF, IL-17, IL-2, IL-4, and SIL-2R alpha, all p less than 0.01. That's just like statistical significance. So singing was associated with reductions in stress. All that means. Academia really doesn't do a good job of breaking things down in a way that's easy for people to understand. But this isn't meant for the layman. This is meant for other people in college or in the higher levels of university. And it's like, why? You're just keeping people out in your ivory fucking tower. And I'm not just saying that because of how white it is, because it is. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. This study provides a preliminary evidence that singing improves mood state and modulates components of the immune system. Further work is needed to ascertain how this differs from more specific patient groups and whether repeat exposure could lead to meaningful longitudinal effects. Over the past 50 years, more than 300 studies have explored the combined psychological and biological value of psychosocial interventions, from mindfulness to yoga to the arts, for cancer patients, survivors, and carers. Psychosocial interventions for all 3 populations have been found to reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety, increase social support networks, improve quality of life, and raise perceptions of care. These positive states have, in turn, been linked to optimized immune responses, including the lowering of inflammation, enhanced cellular function, and other long-term health outcomes. In contrast, negative psychological states and limited social interactions have been linked to lower white blood cell activity, reduced numbers of antibodies, and increased stress hormone response. Such evidence suggests that psychosocial interventions could play an important role in optimizing health in people affected by cancer, helping to put patients in the best position to receive treatment or maintain remission, and supporting staff and relatives who care for someone with cancer. Specifically, there has been a growing interest in the role of music as one such psychosocial intervention. 30 randomized controlled trials were included in a Cochrane review on music and cancer, ranging from music therapy sessions to listening to recorded music. Studies have shown reductions in anxiety, improvements in mood, and reductions in cardiovascular measures, such as blood pressure. However, to date, there has been little attention on the impacts of musical interventions on biological markers of endocrine and immune function. There is nevertheless evidence to suggest that music interventions could have a combined effect on the mental health and immune function of people affected by cancer. Biobehavioral research has proposed that 3 key components are important in achieving immune changes in cancer patients and carers: emotional expression, benefit finding, and social support. My headphones died, so that was what. Music interventions in cancer care are therefore a pertinent avenue to explore as they fulfill all 3 components. Music interventions. I also learned that if you intentionally stutter, it'll help you read better. Music interventions in cancer care are therefore a pertinent avenue to explore as they fulfill all 3 components. They have the potential to help participants express their emotions, enable them to interact with music as a new hobby, and are inherently social. I missed the Oxford comma, man. If there was a comma right there, I'd be able to pause effectively when reading, but it's like, man, I gotta go back. There is also growing evidence of the impact of music making on neuroendocrine and immune responses in other patient populations, with previous studies showing that singing in particular can reduce levels of stress such as cortisol, cortisone, and progesterone. and increased social bonding, including the release of oxytocin. Finally, animal research has shown that music played to rodents reduces the suppressive immune effects of stress associated with cancer, enhances anti-tumor responses, and improves white blood cell function, further paving the way for biological studies in humans. Within service development, there are a growing number of organizations delivering singing programs for people affected by cancer, including patients, carers, and staff. One example of this is the work of Ten Ovis Cancer Care in Wales, whose choirs involve over 1,000 people affected by cancer singing every week. Research around these choirs has identified that long-term involvement across 3 and 6 months is associated with reduced levels of anxiety and depression and improved quality of life. Singing has also been found to provide support and processing of grief for cancer patients and their families. However, it remains unknown whether parallel to psychosocial benefits, singing could have effects on immune response. Consequently, this study aimed to explore whether people affected by cancer who sing regularly in choirs experience psychobiological responses to singing across a single choir session. As this study was the first of its kind, it was conducted as a preliminary single-arm study with two main aims. One, to compare changes across time in 3 separate populations affected by cancer: current carers, bereaved carers, and patients. Um, just so we're all clear on what bereaved means, it's describing a person or family experiencing sorrow and mourning after the death of a loved one. Death? Death? What am I? Death. Death. Wow, those are really similar. So basically, like people caring for people, but they're in mourning. So and patients. 2, to assess whether responses from 3 groups differed from one another in order to explore whether singing was of specific value for any particular group. Was singing more helpful for patients, or was it more helpful for bereaved carers? This was a multi-center single-arm study comparing responses between the 3 participant groups in order to make sure that findings were not just specific to a single choir. 5 choirs were approached via convenient sampling from a total of 18 choirs for people affected by cancer run by Ten Ovis Cancer Care in Wales. Convenient sampling is like, oh, you know somebody, can you get them to be a part of this? That's what convenient sampling is. Well, random is like, we literally just go every 10th person in the phone book. Is that random? No, random would be like you just put names in a hat. So like there's different ways of sampling. Some are more statistically significant than others because you can't generally apply them to the population if you're only pulling from a sample size that's like not applicably. You can't just pick a sample group of people and be like, oh, just because I got results from this group of people, that means I can apply to everybody. The only generalization you can make about people is that you can't generalize because everyone is unique in their own way. Learn that in statistical studies. Participants from within these choirs were invited to take part and recruited at sites where they attended the choirs. A total of 251 patients were screened, and 193 were found to be eligible and consented. Participants were categorized into 4 groups: current carers of someone with cancer, 72, bereaved carers, 66, cancer patients, 55. For all 3 groups, participants had to have attended at least 1 choir session and were excluded if they were under 18. Cancer patients either had a current diagnosis of cancer or in remission, and were excluded if they were currently registered on another clinical trial. If they had a diagnosis of mouth cancer, as this would affect saliva samples. If they were pregnant, if they were currently undergoing any active cancer treatment, including chemotherapy or radiotherapy, or if they were taking oral immunosuppressive drugs. The study protocol was approved by the Conservatoires UK Research Ethics Committee, and all participants gave written information consent prior to the study. Procedure. Participants took part in a single 70-minute choir rehearsal between 1900 and 2010, led by trained choir leader at the usual community locations used each week as sites for the 5 choirs. Sessions consisted of warm-up exercises, learning new songs as a group, and singing songs already in the singer's repertoire. The week preceding the rehearsal, participants were asked to fill in a pack of demographic and psychological scales. Then immediately before and after the rehearsal, participants gave a saliva sample and filled in a set of visual analog scales assessing mood and stress. Psychological measures. Participants' socio-demographic and health characteristics were obtained by means of a set of self-administered questionnaires. This included assessment of well-being using the Warwick-Edinburgh Mental Well-Being Scale, the WEMWBS, a questionnaire used extensively as a measure of mental health ranging from 14 to 70, with higher scores indicating better well-being. Anxiety and depression with the Hospital Anxiety Depression Scale, HADS, ranging from 0 to 21, for each construct with higher scores indicating poor mental health and social function within the Connor-Davidson Resilience Scale, CD-RISC, ranging from 0 to 100 with higher scores indicating stronger resilience. Visual analog scales measuring 12 different moods were also assessed. These consisted of 2 specific sets of visual analog scales, plus an additional measure. One set asked participants to rate specified moods on a series of 100mm lines, higher responses indicating more intense moods: sad, afraid, angry, tired, energetic, happy, and confused. Another set assessed participants' anxiety, relaxation, and stress levels. A final visual analog scale assessed social connectedness. This provided a total of 12 measures of moods. Biological measures. Given recent research suggesting the promise of saliva as an alternative to blood analysis in biobehavioral research, this study used the technique of multiplex saliva assays for the assessment of cortisol and cytokines. Saliva was collected via a passive drool method facilitated by polypropylene straws into low-bind polypropylene 2 milliliter cryovials. Samples were taken at 7 p.m. and 8:15 p.m., a pre-sample and a post-sample. Samples were stored at negative 20 degrees Celsius for a period of 2 weeks before transfer to a negative 40 degrees Celsius from 1 month prior to analysis at AirTech Laboratories. Samples were vortexed and centrifuged before analysis. Supernatants were pipetted into 96 well-filtered plates. Like, this is all just science-y. Yeah, I don't like reading it, but, that's why I'm kind of reading over it, pretty quickly. Following research showing that both acute and chronic stress depression are associated with increases in stress hormones and an inflammatory immune response. The samples were analyzed primarily for the neuroendocrine stress hormone cortisol and 6 cytokines, including these markers have been shown to be responsive to both short and long-term psychosocial interventions, including music in previous studies. In addition, we included 2 soluble receptors, soluble interleukin-2 receptor alpha and soluble tumor necrosis factor receptor 1, as well as the stem cell differentiator growth factor granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factor as indicators of cellular involvement. My God. And we also included the neuropeptides oxytocin and beta endorphin? Is that a B? I think it's beta. Which have been implicated in social bonding and feelings of elation, respectively. All capture and detection antibody standards were purchased from Petrotech UK with the exception of TNF alpha and cortisol. Following incubation for 24 hours, the beads were washed by filtration, and then biotin conjugated antibodies were in the 4 hours. Following the incubation with detection antibodies, the beads were washed and incubated with streptavidin conjugated R phycoerythrin for 45 minutes. Okay, well, let's go to statistical analysis, because that's make my head hurt. But that also makes my head hurt too. Statistical analysis. A one-way analysis of variance was used to test for differences in baseline demographic data between choirs and between patients versus cares. Every time I look at that word, I want to say careers. Repeated measures ANOVAs were used for psychological and biological data to test across time and between groups. The distribution of all biomarkers was positively skewed, and so the data were logarithmically transformed, as there were 12 mood states and 13 biomarkers assessed. The significant p-value for pre-post comparisons using Bonferroni's adjustment was alpha less than 0.002. Correlations between psychological variables and between biomarkers, respectively, were made using Pearson's product moment correlation coefficient for interactions between psychological and biological data. Pearson's product moment correlation coefficients were run, and where significant, regression models were developed with adjustments made for age and sex. Some biomarkers fell below the levels of detection during analysis, which accounts for the adjusted degrees of freedom. I'm gonna drink this smoothie. That's a good smoothie. Anyway, results. 193 participants took part in the study, with the majority being white women. Participants across both groups were on average not symptomatic of having depression or anxiety and had average levels of well-being. Okay, so they don't have depression or anxiety. Good to know. At least not according to the tests. However, their social resilience scores were considerably lower than the general population. A one-way ANOVA revealed there were no significant differences in demographic data between the groups. Psychological profile. The scores are pretty low. It's a high score that's bad, from what I can remember. Medication type. Hormonal, antidepressant, antibody, cholesterol. Oh, so it tells you, like, what medications they were on. So 25.8% of bereaved carers were taking some sort of blood pressure medication. And then the type of cancer that they had, which is only applicable to patients, the 55 people. Of the 55 people, 43.9% had breast cancer. So almost half of the women in this study were having breast cancer. Psychological results. Across time, there were no significant differences in mood at baseline between the three groups. Across a single choir session, there were significant effects on time across 12 moods assessed, with increases in positive affect and decreases in negative affect. Exploratory analyses showed that these results were found consistently for all 5 choirs with no statistical difference in response. Responses to all 8 moods are correlated, as were responses to the 3 stress items, so for both, negatively scored constructs were reverse scored and aggregate mood and stress scales were constructed. For the aggregate scale for mood, Cronbach's alpha was 0.83 for pre-measurements and 0.82 for post-measurements, and for the aggregate scale for stress, Cronbach's alpha was 0.77 for both the pre- and post-measurements, indicating that both the component ratings were reliably interrelated. Aggregate mood was found to improve across the choir session, and aggregate stress was found to decrease. Mood was particularly found to increase for those who had lower mental well-being, with significant positive correlation between changes in mood and baseline anxiety levels and depression levels, and significant negative correlations between changes in mood and baseline levels of both well-being and social resilience. Furthermore, there was a significant negative correlation between baseline mood and change in mood score across the intervention. Stress was found to decrease, particularly for those in higher anxiety and depression levels. However, there was less of an association shown with positive measurements of well-being, with no significant correlation with social resilience and only a very small correlation with well-being. As with mood, participants with higher levels of stress at baseline experienced the greatest changes during singing. There was no significant differences between the 3 groups. Individual or aggregate measures of mood, stress, or connectedness, indicating a general consistency of effect. Biological results across time. There were no significant differences in biological response at the baseline between 3 groups. Across a single choir session, there were significant effects of time for 12 of the 13 biomarkers assessed, 10 of which held when controlling for multiple comparisons with alpha less than 0.0031. Explanatory analyses showed that these results were found across all 5 choirs with no statistical difference in response. I've seen a lot of numbers. We're just going to skip to the discussion, because I think we get it, like, what it's saying. The primary aim of the study was to explore whether group singing was associated with modulations in mood and neuroendocrine, neuropeptide, and immune responses in 3 different groups affected by cancer who were regularly involved in choirs, carers, bereaved carers, and patients. All results demonstrated that a single hour of singing was associated with increases in positive effect, decreases in negative effect, a decrease in cortisol, beta endorphin, and oxytocin, and a general activation of the cytokine network. The secondary aim was to explore the differences in response between the 4 groups. Despite no baseline differences in the responses between the 4 groups, there were significant differences in response in 3 biomarkers. The main finding is that singing was associated with a decrease in cortisol and an increase in cytokine activity, found generally consistently across all 5 choirs and among all 4 groups. Previous studies involving singing have demonstrated that singing can modulate cortisol levels. However, this is the first to demonstrate that singing is associated with the modulation of cytokines, receptors, and neuropeptides involved in immune response. These findings of a parallel decrease in cortisol and an increase in cytokine activity in response to a short music intervention replicate those of a previous study involving making music, in which mental health service users and carers involved in group drumming sessions had increases in those alongside decreases in cortisol, as in this study. Furthermore, the same cortisol-cytokine negative relationship has been found in response to other psychosocial interventions in oncology. One positive explanation for this response is that the reduction of cortisol following singing reduced glucocorticoid suppression of the immune system, leading to a general activation of the cytokine network and increased immune activity. Although despite the correlations between cortisol and cytokines shown here, it is not possible to establish the direction of causality between the two. Following on from this, there was also a pattern of slightly weaker pro-inflammatory response compared with anti-inflammatory response among both carers and patients. There were no significant changes across time in the pro-inflammatory marker MCP-1, and similarly levels of IL-6 and IFN-Y. I don't know if that's a Y. What is that? I know it's a Greek something. I mean, it looks like a Y had sex with a V. It's a gamma. It's the third letter of the Greek alphabet. All right, gamma. I'm glad I'm learning some Greek letters. Reached significance using a p-value of p less than 0.05, but did not reach the adjusted significance value of point less than 0.002. Furthermore, there was evidence that greater improvements in mood. What am I doing? Am I doing Christopher Walken? Am I doing Boston? What am I doing? As a result of singing were associated with lower pro-inflammatory response. Interestingly, this appeared to be independent of stress levels. High levels of inflammation are associated with many mental health conditions, including depression. It is instructive to note that among both participants and carers, those with the lowest levels of mental well-being and highest levels of depression experienced the greatest short-term improvement in mood across the singing session, and that these larger mood changes were associated with lower levels of inflammation. A hypothesis to be tested further is whether singing on a regular basis leads to a larger and more sustainable improvement in mood, and whether this affects inflammatory response. Another finding is that singing was associated Another finding was that singing was associated decreases in oxytocin. I don't like the way that's worded. This isn't. Singing was associated decreases in oxytocin and beta endorphin. Is contrary to some of previous research, two previous findings found that oxytocin increased in response to music. Although Krentz's study notably did not find decreases for cortisol, while Nilsson's was in relation to listening to music and not in singing. Similarly, the only previous study with beta endorphin in response to listening to music found a reduction. Oxytocin has been linked with social bonding and attachment, with higher oxytocin levels found, for example, in mothers and fathers in association with their social engagement with their children, and beta endorphin is associated with feelings of euphoria. However, both have also been found to be involved in stress regulation, with increased levels in response to a wide variety of stressful stimuli serving to dampen blood pressure, heart rate, and non-epinephrine levels. Indeed, there have even been suggestions of beta endorphin being regulated alongside the stress hormone adrenocorticotropin. Wow, can't believe I just said that. In stress response by the pituitary gland. Given the correlations found between cortisol and both oxytocin and beta endorphin and their correlations with one another, and the negative correlations between the neuropeptides and cytokines which mirror the relationship between cortisol and the cytokines, it seems likely that the decrease found here was part of a generalized downregulation of stress response which may have overridden any social bonding or happiness associated increase. Nevertheless, the positive associations found between changes in connectedness and beta endorphin near significant association with oxytocin may point to two contradictory processes at play. In addition, this study examined differences in psychological and biological response between the three groups, and as such, whether singing is particularly effective for one group or equally beneficial for all. There were no significant differences in any of the psychological measures, suggesting that singing is similarly received by carers and patients. However, despite broadly similar responses in biomarkers, there were some discrepancies. Patients exhibited no significant changes in STNFR1 response, whereas both carers and bereaved carers showed significant increases. TNF-alpha and its soluble receptors of STNFR1 have been implicated in cancer physiology as both promoters and inhibits of tumor progression. Some studies have found associations between heightened levels and increased risk of some cancers, as well as evidence that TNF-A is involved in tumorigenesis, including cellular transformation, angiogenesis, and metastasis. However, and then it just ends. It just didn't continue that sentence. They just get rid of that. Patients also showed opposite MCP1 responses to carers. Only bereaved carers showed significant responses in IL-17 or MCP1. Bereaved carers exhibit no baseline differences in mental health or either baseline levels of or change in scores in mood or stress compared to current carers or patients, suggesting that this was not a difference in psychological processing. Instead, it may be that current carers and patients had blunted IL-17 and MCP responses. Given this was a preliminary study, it would be premature to draw any firm conclusions from these findings, and they deserve to be studied more. And then they talk about the limitations of the study. It was a preliminary uncontrolled study, and it's possible that some of these psychological and biological results have occurred in the absence of singing. They simply had rested for if they just rested for 70 minutes. There is evidence that cytokines do not routinely change across an hour in the absence of intervention. Participants' stress levels were relatively low at the start of the session, suggesting the findings were not wholly due to participants feeling acute stress at the start of the session that merely abated over the following hour. Nevertheless, a future controlled study is encouraged on the basis of these preliminary findings to explore these issues in more depth and also explore which features of singing are most important. Whether it's the social engagement of being in a choir, or the physical exercise of standing and singing for 70 minutes, or the music itself. Second, we examine only the effects of a single session of singing. It remains unknown whether repeated singing sessions could impact immune function, and specifically, if the results noted here could be maintained over time. Third, the study focused on participants who were current members of choirs. The ethos of the choirs was that no prior experience was necessary, so many people had no singing experience prior to the enrollment of the choirs. Enrollment should have 2 L's. But it was nevertheless a self-selecting sample. It remains unknown whether singing could be a benefit for people who would not normally opt to be involved in a choir. Finally, cancer patients involved in the study had varying types of cancer and were at varying stages of treatment. This was a short intervention, and confounding factors such as immune-affecting medication were removed to allow data to be analyzed. However, it would be revealing to explore in more detail the effects of singing with defined patient groups and at targeted time points in cancer progression in order to confirm whether singing can have biologically meaningful effects. In conclusion, this study demonstrates association between singing and reduced negative and increased positive effect, reduced cortisol, oxytocin, and beta endorphin, and increased levels of cytokines. It's the first study to demonstrate widespread immune effects of singing, in particular its effects on cytokines. The choice of biomarkers within this study included several that play important roles in cancer. Within the context of this preliminary study involving a single session of group singing, it's not possible to ascertain the implications of these changes. They appear to occur as part of an acute, non-specific cytokine activation. But it would be of interest to ascertain whether these changes could be sustained with repeated exposure into the intervention over a longer time span with more specific patient groups. Such research could identify whether the psychosocial benefits of a communal activity such as group singing could lead to enhanced immune function in patients and carers affected by cancer. Ian Lewis and Rosie Dow are employed by the Cancer Care Center, who run the cancer choirs and funded this study. All other authors declare no conflicts of interest. This research was funded by the Tenovis Cancer Care. AS and LAC are supported by the British Heart Foundation. We wish to thank the Sing With Us choirs, leaders, and participants for their involvement in the study. And that was the article from the National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biotechnology Information, article titled Singing Modulates Mood, Stress, Cortisol, Cytokine, and Neuropeptide Activity in Cancer Patients and Carers. Written by Daisy Fancourt, Aaron Williamon, Livia A. Carvalho, Andrew Steptoe, Rosie Dow, and Ian Lewis. And this article was free. So the DOI is right here. So you should be able to access it yourself, but no reason to read it because, just read it for you. So the question I have to ask myself is, like, after reading that, do I feel better? And I think I do. I guess I kind of just feel tired. Oh my god, I was recording all that too. Huh. 41 minutes and 13 seconds. I forgot I pulled up my voice recorder and I recorded all that. Now I have 2 voice recordings. Cool. One will be on Twitch and the other won't be on Twitch. Alright. Boy. Yay for it helping. Wheezy, I'm surprised you're still here. I thought I would have bored you to death, I figured I would have lulled you to sleep by reading that. And that's not me trying to be mean. It's not trying to be mean, it's just like, trying to be self-aware, I was actually lurking. I figured you were lurking. Well, part of me thought you were lurking, because I figured you're not the type of person that would just leave without saying anything, which I appreciate. Doing what you have to do, I'm glad that I was able to get you back to call that working, you know? I think that still deserves a Nerf gunshot, you know? Well, you apologized for getting me to learn something today, so why don't we just call it even? Well, I'm just trying, like, why am I comparing myself to other people? Well, because other people aren't doing this. Well, they probably are. I'm just assuming that they aren't. Is that like unfair for me to do? As a category, we can go into just chatting. This person's riding a bike. From Poland to Romania. Interesting. #1 goddess on Twitch. What is love? Juicers United. It's just... I'm not going to judge, alright? No judging. I'm not going to sit here and be all like, oh, what's wrong with streamers? Oh, that one's cool. Sumo wrestling. That actually, like, I've actually watched that before. Midnight Sumo. There's a guy who's like sort of like saying in English what's happening. This guy's playing Marvel Rivals, but yet he's doing it under. I think they aren't as educational, at least not in the same way. No, if I can see your titties, I'm. You know, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, right? But as a woman, Wheezy, like I talked to Bunny about this the other day. Like, to me, it's no coincidence where if I can see your boobs, the numbers are higher. Like I can prove it. You know, this isn't just my opinion. You know what I mean? Like this girl here, 13 viewers, not showing her titties. All right, but her 282 viewers. All right, 43 viewers, some cleavage, not a lot. But here you can't even really see it. It's blocked up with something. So 13 viewers. But then we go down here, she 136 viewers. And this isn't me trying to be judgmental. She's driving. Fucking, you are 1,000% correct. Okay, so like this isn't just me from like a man's perspective, you know. It's like it's demeaning yourself. Like her, she's making pizza. That's fine. I got no issues with that. The weather is amazing. 191 people watching, and she just got her tits out. It's like, come on. But like her, we're making a robotic arm. 23 people watching. That's probably educational and nobody's fucking watching it. You know, her, completely covered up, 11 people. She's fixing her sewing machine. And then some people are like actually playing a game, but they have it under a different category. Oh my god, dude. What the fuck? What is going on with this website? These are some massive honkers. I shan't play a game until poll decides. See, that's fine. 38 people watching. I see 79 people watching, but I bet if it was unzipped a bit more, you know, we'd see something different, you know. Hooray, we've been saved by cheaper Alton Towers. Morning chill stream. This guy's doing his tandem cycling. So it's two people riding a bike together and they're streaming together. Being physically active. That's nice. Welding the beast with Gigadad? Okay. I like a woman with a future and a past, a little attitude, all good. It'll make it last. I don't even know what the fuck, dude. That's just come on. It's like furry shit, man. Come on. I said I wouldn't judge. I said I'm not trying to judge, you know? But what the fuck? Your reactions are priceless. Are they? Okay, good. Because I'm starting to understand why people do this. Because this feels like kind of like lazy content. But like, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this because it's like, really? Latex Princess ASMR? And you're going to tell me she doesn't have a link to another channel, website thing. They're just really pushing it, you know? Tomboy Wolf Girl. Only hands leak stream. And it's like, I don't even want to click on any of these things because I'm afraid that it's going to like recommend stuff like that. My forehead is bigger than yours. Why? Why? Why are you being mean to yourself? Like, what? It's just, I don't know. Gamer girl ooh ooh. Ace, what the hell did I join onto? What you were coming onto, Ace, is I was reading an article, and then I got done with the article, and I was trying to come on here and ascertain whether people are also doing, like, educational content, and god fucking damn it. The conclusion that I have come to... Oh, I can hit not interested! Wow! Huh, I'm about to go through, and if I see some cleavage, I'm fucking getting rid of it. Gamer girl ooh ooh. Nope. Not interested. I'm just saying, like, if you're making it very blatantly obvious that you're just trying to, like, be sexual. Oh, hey, Bunny, how's it going? My forehead is bigger than yours. I mean, not only the titties, but it's also, like, be nice. Be nice to yourself. Shopping for Vietnam trip. I don't know, man. Just if it seems like it would be trying to sexualize yourself, I'm not really interested. Yeah, Ace, how are you? I didn't ask. But my theory is that if I can see titties, that it leads to a higher number. In fact, I can probably just sort it by viewer count. So she's not. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Boost your stream now. Twitchlift.com. Are these all bots? Dude, that's not good. This person has 0 people following them, but yet they have 43,000 people watching. That ain't right. That's not right. That can't be right. And look, there's just a girl in the top right. It's the same fucking thing here. It seems. I suspect it's a bot. No followers, but 43K. I probably, like, shouldn't be doing this live. I feel like I'm just painting a giant target on my back when I do something like that, so... Yeah. But anyway. Bunny said... Let me check up on the chat here. Bunny says, it's going well. I just got home. How are you, Beef? How is everyone? I'm feeling good. I just did an article reading talking about why singing can actually improve your mood and reduce your stress. They took people, long story short, they took people that had cancer, taking care of people that had cancer, or had just been taking care of somebody who died to whatever. So, like, it took all 3 people, took their spit to see how much cortisol was in it before they were singing, stood still for 70 minutes and sang in a choir together, and it turns out that it actually made them less stressed out. And Wheezy says, I'm about to leave for an ankle doctor appointment. Well, I hope your ankle is okay. What are we doing? What are we doing? Well, I mean, I did that. Because I was playing the PZ Smeagol thing. No wonder why I did choir since 7th grade. Yeah, I want to be in a choir too, Ace, is what I'm saying. Like, it was 8th grade for me. Good luck at your appointment, Weezy. Yes, Bunny, I agree. Pretty sure I sprained it for like the 1000th time. Thank you. Ugh, man. Bunny knows that pain. She's been wrapping her her foot, her ankle, I should say, not her foot. Did you wrap your wrist too, Bunny? Because I thought you said, oh no, your knee. You wrapped your knee and your ankle. But yeah, If you want to learn why some people talk more than other people, I would check out that article that I posted in Educational. And matter of fact, I'm going to go to my history here. Singing modulates mood. And I'm just going to go ahead and take that and pop it in Discord in the Educational tab because that was pretty educational. Ankle, knee, and shoulder. Okay, got it. I was about to say I have an extra air cast if you want it, Bunny, but it is only for ankles. It says Wheezy. That would be nice. But, yeah. At least you can use the one for the one ankle, I guess. Yeah. But the limitations of that study was like, does singing over periods of time, not just one time, help you? So, like, you could sort of take that from like if I wanted to do research on my own and be like, before I started singing, I was anxious, and then now I started singing afterwards. Am I less anxious? Am I more anxious? Because I was thinking if you're doing it live, that might make you more anxious than if you were just doing it not live, right? If you were just in your room by yourself, alone, singing to yourself, would that make you less worried or more worried?